सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। ओम पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ओम शांति शांति शांति। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। चैतन्यं सर्वगं सर्वं सर्वभूतगुहाशयम् यत्सर्वविषयातीतं तस्मै सर्वविदे नमः। निर्गुण पुरुषमत प्रक्रिया निराकृत्य, having refuted the prakriya, the methodology of Nirguna Purusha, that is Sankhya, who believe, posit that Purusha, the Atma, is Nirguna, of the nature of changeless consciousness, but that there are two independent realities, Purusha and Prakriti, and Prakriti is unconscious. So this is that Prakriya. This is that Prakriya, the model, to explain, our life, to explain the reality of life. And the thesis is that by knowing the reality of life, then you get liberated, because ignorance of these realities of life in that is what is the cause of samsara or dukkha, and the knowledge, the viveka jnanam, will release you from samsara. Except that this prakriya, this acceptance of two realities, Purusha and Prakriti, where Purusha is changeless consciousness, Prakriti is unconscious, that assumption cannot explain anything. That's what the Vedanta showed. You cannot explain the whole process of creation, because what initiates the creation process? That you can't explain. And also you can't explain various other things also that are pointed out. That the artharthi sambandha, you say that the Prakriti serves the purpose of Purusha. One is like a servant, other is master. That also you cannot explain, because that one is called a master who is beneficiary of the service performed by the servant. Therefore, as a result of the service performed, some change should happen in the one who is served, who is benefited. That's called benefit. When I am better off than what I was before, that requires me to change from one state to the other, and that cannot happen to Purusha, who is changeless. Nor can Prakriti, who is inert or unconscious, knows what the Purusha wants. And suppose according to you, The Prakriti knows what Purusha wants and therefore presents before Purusha a whole setup to help him accomplish his goal of bhoga or apavarga, of pleasure or moksha. Then also, Prakriti is one. What it does is one thing at a time. How can the one thing that the Prakriti does, how can it satisfy the needs of Purushas who have contradictory needs? That also doesn't make sense. Thus, in many ways, it was explained how this whole model, this whole imagination doesn't make sense. प्रधानस्य भृत्यवत् उपकारकत्व असंभवात्. That pradhana cannot be beneficiary like a servant is for the master. अतः प्रधान पुरुषयोः अर्थार्थित्व कल्पना न युक्तम. And so this artharthi kalpana etc. na yuktam is not logical. अतः इत्थम अव्यवस्थितम सांख्य शास्त्रम न मोक्षुभि श्रद्धेयमिति भावः. Therefore, the Sankhya Prakriya, the whole idea is to help the aspirant contemplate upon the nature of reality, which contemplation is a means of knowledge, which is means of liberation. How should we contemplate? So various models have been presented here of the Charvakas, of the Jaina, of the Kshanika Vijnanin, Shunya Vijnanin, Shunyavadi, and now the Sankhya. So these prakriyas or the models are examined one by one to show how there is basic defect in the whole thinking process. And therefore, if you contemplate upon the truth the way they are explaining to you, you will not arrive at the reality. You will not arrive at the true knowledge. And therefore, you cannot attain the purpose of freedom. Now, continuing this refuting of the principal schools of thought that are available there, with the verse 51 says, Nirguna Purusha Mata Prakriyam Nirakritya. So that's the Prakriya of Sankhya, where Purusha is Nirguna, which is no problem with us, except that Prakriti is different. And that there is no acceptance of Parameshvara. Sankhyas do not see the need of accepting another principle who can be held, considered as the cause of prompting the Prakriti to do what is required. So Prakriti cannot be prompted because there is no Purusha outside, no Parameshvara outside that. Purusha is inactive, so it cannot prompt. The gunas cannot prompt each other because then they will always be prompting, there will be always activity or inactivity. So this is Nirguna Purusha Mata Prakriya. This Prakriya where the Purusha is thought to be Nirguna, inactive. Sagunaha Purusha. Now the Vaisheshika Mata Prakriyam Dushayati. Vaisheshika say that Purusha or Atma is the guna, possessed of many gunas or qualities. Sukham, Dukkham, Jnana, Prayatna, Ichcha, Dvesha. So many these gunas imagined to belong to Atma. Because this Ichcha, Dvesha, Sukha, Dukkha, they must belong somewhere. And our experience, I am Sukhi, I am Dukkhi. So the I is the ashraya, the locus of the Ichcha, Dvesha, that's our experience. And therefore they said that the Atma is the locus of the Adhara, locus of the qualities of Ichcha, Dvesha, Sukham, Dukkham, Prayatna, etc. Meaning the Purusha or the Atma is Saguna, possessed of these gunas. So now let us see if this is what we accept, then whether can we explain our day-to-day experiences or not. So says the Tika, Atmakatena Jnanena Atmakataha Sukhadaya Guna Prakashante Dihite Manyante Tannu Upadyate. This experience, Sukhi Aham, I am happy, I am unhappy, this day-to-day experience. So you experience Sukham or Dukkham, which is the Guna of Atma. When can you experience that? When happiness becomes manifest or evident, then you can experience happiness. If Dukkham, unhappiness, becomes evident, you experience unhappiness. You cannot experience unmanifest happiness, unhappiness, like in deep sleep. You can experience this Ichcha, Dvesha, Prayatna, these gunas or qualities, only when they become manifest. Now, how can something become manifest? Only when it is illumined by the light of knowledge. So when Sukham becomes illumined by the light of knowledge, you can experience Sukha, otherwise you cannot. Now knowledge also, Jnanam also is the quality of Atma, one of the qualities. Sukham, so Jnana, Prayatna, Ichcha, Dvesha, Sukham, Dukkham, these are all the gunas or qualities of Atma. So Jnanam also is the quality of Atma. They imagine that Atma is a dravya or a substance. It is a substance inherently unconscious. So Jnanam or consciousness is the guna or quality of Atma. That's what they believe. Sankhya say that the consciousness is the nature of Atma, which is, close to what the reality is. But these people say, no, if knowledge or consciousness is the nature of Atma, then you should experience, you should be conscious all the time. That's called Svabhava, Swarupa. In deep sleep state, there is no consciousness. Therefore, consciousness is not the inherent nature of Atma. Atma is unconscious by nature. Then how do you become conscious when you wake up? How does consciousness come in the dream or waking state? Their answer is when the mind wakes up, when Atma Manas Sanyoga is there, when there is Sanyoga, the union or joining of Atma and Manaha, the mind, that combination creates consciousness. Unconscious Atma becomes conscious when it comes in association with the mind. The mind also is unconscious. Atma also is unconscious. How can two unconscious entities create consciousness? Like scientists believe that a primordial consciousness, but all elements are unconscious. How can their combination bring about consciousness? Hey, don't you know the betel leaf, which is green, and the what do you call it? The calcium, lime rather, which is white. So green betel leaf and white lime, when they combine, you chew them. There is red color. See, it's not present in either of them. It can happen, and stuff like that. So Sankhya says that how the unconscious cloud knows the need of the conscious forest, and that's how selectively there is rain where the forest is. That example of how unconscious Prakriti knows the need of conscious Purusha. Here, how unconscious Atma displays consciousness in this manner. So Atma and Mana, both of them should come in contact with each other. Then consciousness comes, then we can become conscious of happiness. Because Jnanam also is Guna. And Jnanam or the consciousness or the knowledge will manifest when Atma and Mana, the self and the mind, they come in contact with each other. In deep sleep, that contact is not there, therefore the knowledge is not manifest. When you wake up, mind wakes up, Atma and the mind come in contact with each other, consciousness arises. This is their model. Now remember that Jnanam or the knowledge also is a quality. And says Sukham also is a quality. Sukham, qualities such as Sukham, can be known only when the knowledge is manifest. But knowledge can become manifest only when the Atma and the mind come in contact with each other. And Sukham also can become manifest when Atma and mind come in contact with each other. Now that can one contact at a time. So when Atma and mind are in contact with each other, one of them, the Jnanam can arise, become manifest. Not Sukham. Now Jnanam and Sukham should be together. Light and the illumined object must be together for something to illumine. So Sukham or happiness, in order to be known, must be illumined by Jnanam or knowledge. So knowledge, Jnanam and Sukham, they must exist simultaneously for the Jnanam to illumine Sukham, for you to feel happiness. But both of them are the product of the joining or union of Atma and mind. At a time, only one of them can become manifest. So when Jnana is manifest, Sukham is not there. Sukham is manifest, Jnana is not there. So how will you know Sukham? Sukha is an example, applies to all other qualities also. That's where the Tika said, Atmakatena, Jnanena, Atmakataha, Sukhadeva Guna, Prakashante iti. Atmakatena, Jnanena. So Jnana which is potential there in the Atma. Atmakata, Sukhaha, Sukhadeva Gunaha. Jnana also is Guna. Sukha, Dukkha, etc. Raga, Ichcha, Dvesha are also Gunas, Prayatna. So knowledge which is located in Atma, by that knowledge the Sukha etc. also located in Atma is illumined. Ite manyande, that's what they say. Tanna upadyate, but that is not, no upadyate is not tenable. Is not in keeping with logic or reasoning. So that's what he said in the verse number 51. न प्रकाश्यम यथोष्णत्वम् ज्ञानेनैवं सुखादयः एकनीडत्वतो ग्राह्याः स्युः कणादादिवर्त्मना. Yatha Ushnatvam na Prakasham. This is the illustration. Ushnatvam is a heat, so fire has these two things. Heat and light are both these gunas or qualities of fire. Both are inherent in fire. Says that the light in the fire cannot illumine the heat in the fire. Because illuminator and illumined, they must be in different locus. Illumined is in one locus called the object, Illuminator is another locus called the subject. The subject object cannot be in the same locus. Now, light and heat are in the same locus called fire. So they cannot have the separation that is required for the illuminator illumined. The heat, which is located in fire, is in the same locus as the light which is in fire. Therefore, the distance that is required of illuminator illumined, they cannot exist between the light and fire, because light and heat, because both of them in one locus. Example. So say the टीका आने बंद कर देना फोन ने, अरे फैन ने. तथा ही so तन्न उपपद्यते. They say that the knowledge illumines sukhadayo gunaha. Tat no upadyate, that is not logical, tenable. Tatha to illustrate how two things located in the same locus cannot have a relationship of illuminator illumined. Yatha ushnatvam agninishtam agninisthena prakashena na prakasham prakasharam na bhavati. Just as the ushnatvam, the heat, which is located in fire, agnisthena prakashana, na prakashyam prakasharam, it doesn't become fit to be illumined by light, which is in fire itself. Why? Ekashrayatvat, because both of them have the same ashraya, same locus, therefore they cannot have the distance that is required between the illuminator and illumined. The illuminator must always be different from the illumined. So the light in the fire has to illumine the heat in the fire. The light must be in a different locus than the heat, but they are in the same locus. Therefore, they cannot have the illuminator-illumined relationship. Then jnanena evam sukhadaya evam jnanena sukhadaya na prakashyaha. Evam, in that same manner, sukhadayo gunaha, sukha and dukkha and jnanam, prayatna, ichcha, etc., dvesha, gunaha, atmanisthena, all these various 14 gunas or qualities which are nishtha or locus in atma, jnanena agrahyaha, they cannot be grasped, they cannot be known, illumined by jnana, which is one of the gunas. No, jnana has to be called a guna because atma is a substance which is not inherently conscious. So consciousness in atma has to be an event, has to take place when some situation happens, when the combination of atma and mana happens. So sukha and jnanam enjoy the same status of being located in atma. Atma jnana grahya agrahya nagrahya syuhu. So just as the heat in the fire cannot be illumined by the light in the fire, so also the sukham in the atma cannot be illumined by jnanam in atma. Kutah? So this is a statement, this is pratigna. What's the hetu? Kutah? So next line, eka nidatvataha. That tasil pratyaya is the fifth case which gives you the hetu or the reason. Eka nidatvataha. Eka nidatva, nida, ashraya. And so, therefore, they belong to same ashraya. Like the birds, they belong to same nida, ashraya. So these are the birds like sukha, etc. Therefore, so eka nidatvat, eka ashrayatvat. Kanadadi vartmanam syuhu. So this is Vartman, means path, means matam. So Kanadadi Vartmanam Mate Ityartha. This is Kanadadi Mata. So the Kanada Rishi is said to be the originator of the whole system of Vaisheshika. They are called Vaisheshikas because they accept Vishesha. Basically, they are called atomists. According to them, the universe is made of the 5 atoms, combination of 5 paramanu, they call it, which is atom. And each paramanu by nature is the fundamental particle, 4 actually. The earth, water, fire and air. And is an atom, like the Newtonian atom. The smallest particle, dimensionless particle, partless particle, which cannot be, because anything that is having parts can be subdivided. And thus by process of subdividing, you have to reach a point where you find which cannot be further divided. That will be fundamental particle. So boson, like now God particle, hopefully that's the fundamental one, which cannot be further reduced to something else. Now therefore these 4 atoms of paramanu are the fundamental. If they are partless, and they are also formless, dimensionless. Now the universe names and forms of dimension. How can you unite dimensionless atoms to arrive at the name and form and substance is a dimension? 2 dimensionless or nirvishesha atoms. How can they produce 2 points? The point is dimensionless. What is line? Line is a series of points, but then 2 points can't be in fact joined because point has no dimension. So that is similar thing, So how can dimensionless, nirvishesha-less atoms, how can they combine to produce a universe which has all these visheshas? So they say that at some point in time, when 2 atoms combine, that is commonly called dvanuk. When 3 dvanuk combine, they call it trinuk or trasarenu. It's the finest particle that you can see. When a ray of sun enters a dark room through an aperture, you see this dust, along that ray. So those particles are trasarenu. So that is the dust particle, which is the smallest thing that we can perceive. This combination of 3 dvanuk, which in turn is called 2 anu, dvianu. So dvanuk cannot be perceived, trinuk cannot be perceived, but trasarenu, when 3 trinuks, when they combine, they can be perceived. And that is when they attain visheshas. So this is called vishesha. Where did it come from? Like Sankhyas cannot explain how Prakriti is prompted to action. These fellows cannot explain how dimensionless, attributeless atoms combine to create attributes. Now that is a mystery. That's called Vaisheshikas, So fundamental things don't make sense. This is because they give reality to the universe. Things don't make sense because universe is taken to be real. All these are dualists. For them matter is real. And therefore, that's the reason why there are fundamental flaws. Because what is unreal, when you assume it to be real and then try to explain it, there are fundamental flaws in thinking. So Vedanta can find flaws with anybody. Anybody who gives reality to what is mithya, he will have problems somewhere or other because somehow that mithya has to become real, So this is Kanada. So Kanada, Kanam Attidi Kanada. But that sage was a great, tapasvi, great austerity. He would only pick up the grains from the field after harvest is done, called luncha vritti. And so That's how they were all very great tapasvis, austerities, penance. So great thinkers, no doubt about that. A great contribution to the Indian system of thinking. We have a problem with these fundamentals. Afterwards we use all that prakriyas. We are very useful to explain vyavahara, not explain truth. Their prakriyas cannot explain truth. Their prakriyas can explain vyavahara. So as far as vyavahara is concerned, we use those prakriyas. So tika says, Vishaya Vishayanoho Samadeshatve Grashyamidam Rahakamidai iti cha bhed niyama na siddhyet iti bhava. Vishaya Vishayanoho Samadeshatve. If jnana eliminates sukham, then jnana is subject. Sukham is object. Subject is called Vishay. Object called Vishaya. So Vishaya Samadeshatve. If both of them happen in the same locus, then how can you distinguish this is subject and this is object? Subject must stand apart from object, then you can distinguish. But both of them are in the same locus, you can't distinguish. That were two entities existing in the same locus cannot have the relationship of subject and object, grahya, grahaka, grahya. So that grahak, grahya, grahaka bheda must be there. For perception to take place, there must be a perceiver and perceived. A subject-object difference must be there, but they are both the same locus, and they cannot have that difference. So you can't explain the experience of happiness. न केवलम एक आश्रयत्वादेव ज्ञानसुखादिनां भाष्यभाषिकत अनुपत्तिः. So not only because they are in the same locus, that jnanam and sukha cannot have the relationship of bhasaka bhasya, the subject, object, element, element. Apitu yogapadya asambhavadapi. Second thing that is required for us to experience something is that the experiencer and experience must be in the same time, Number two, the experiencer should have a locus different from experienced. An experiencer and experience, both of them should be yugapat at the same time. The flower was here 10 years ago and I am here, even a second ago. I can't experience flower when the experience is not when the experiencer is. So yogapatyam, experienced and experiencer, illumined and illuminator must also exist in the same time. They should exist in different locuses and they should exist at the same time. So that also won't work with these people. So the next verse is Yugapat samavetatvam sukha vijnana yorapi mano yogaika hetutvad agrahyattvam sukhasya ca. Sukha vijnanayoho yugavat samavetatvam na. So that na has to be added. There is pratigna in the first line. Sukha vijnanayoho api yugavat samavetatvam na. So Tika says, na iti purva shloka anuvartaniyam. So na prakashyam, earlier was started, na prakashyam, that nakara also should be drawn here. The na yugapat samavetatvam sukha vijnanayorapi. Then that first statement, line becomes a pratigna, is proposition, pratigna, for which you provide the hetu. So na iti purva shloka anuvartaniyam tathacha ayam artha. Then the artha, the meaning of the first line will be like this. sukha vijnanayo na yugapat samavetatvam sambhavati. The na is added. So this is pratigna. The sukha and vijnana, yugapat samavetatvam, they cannot be connected to each other at the same time. Yugapat, simultaneously. They cannot coexist at the same time. Samavetatvam is union or joining. They cannot enjoy the unitedness or joining or presence at the same time. So therefore also they cannot enjoy the relationship of the illuminator, illumined. Illuminator comes 5 minutes later. That is what is happening in all investigations. Things have happened, then police come. So now they are trying to understand things, but that has already happened. Only something is present now. If those who have left some evidence which is present now, which evidence can be connected by inference to that, then they can, investigation is possible. Sometimes the criminals are so clever they leave no evidence at all. In that case, the simultaneity must be there for illuminator, illumined, investigator, investigated, subject, object. So this is the proposition. Then kutaha again, what's the reason? So mano yoga eka hetu tvat, again tvat is what hetu, 5th case. Mano yoga eka hetu tvat. So mano yoga eka hetu tvat, manassanyogasya asamvaya karanasya ekameva atmaganam prati hetutva vivagamat. So because one hetu is there, for jnanam to become manifest, mano yogikam is required. So mano yoga is required, for jnanam. So atma mano yoga. For jnanam or consciousness to manifest, you require yoga, the union of atma and the mind. Same hetu. What? The union of atma and mind is required for the manifestation of sukha. So eka hetutva. Manifestation of happiness also requires one hetu is what? Atma mano yoga. And manifestation of jnanam also requires same hetu, atma, same hetu is required. If other things created, manifest atma and something else, then they can be together. Two different hetus can exist at the same time. One hetu cannot exist at the same time. Therefore, manassanyogasya asamvaya karanasya. Asamvaya karana. Samvaya is simultaneous presence. Or samvaya means also is an inseparable relationship. Like between clay and pot, relationship is samvaya, inseparable. A samvaya not, they're separate. Like this has one cause, God has clay, is called samavaya karanam. Inseparable cause. Pot cannot be without clay. We call it upadana karanam. The pot also requires other causes. For example, it requires a wheel. So, potter's wheel is also a karanam, but not samavaya. Meaning, it doesn't, it is not part of this. It's not inseparable relationship. You call asamvaya karanam. So, for creation of something, you call samvaya karanam, which is what we call the upadana karanam, material cause. Asamvaya karanam becomes nimitta karanam. So, pot makers, potter's wheel, and all that stuff that is required is nimitta karanam, asamvaya karanam, the cause which is separated, separate cause, inseparable cause. So now, this knowledge arises because of this sanyoga or the union of atma and mana. That's not part of it. Separate, there is a samvaya karanam. Not samvaya karanam, asamvaya karanam for the manifestation of the knowledge. The union of Atma and mind is an independent thing. It's not that they cannot, they have to be together. They don't have to be. Therefore, Atmanas Sanyoga is asamvaya karanam for manifestation of Sukha or manifestation of Jnanam. So, manifestation of Sukha requires same karanam. Atmana Yoga as the manifestation of Jnanam also requires same karanam. Atmana Yoga. So, one karanam cannot be together. So, when Atmana Yoga happens, then Sukha manifests. At that time, Jnanam is not manifest. Depends on the kind of association. Atma and Mana have association such as to manifest Sukha. Atma, Mana should have different association so as to manifest Jnanam. Same kind of, because Jnanam is a different thing, therefore the association must be of different nature for Jnanam to manifest. Since Sukha is different from Jnanam, therefore the Atma-Manas Sanyoga must have a different nature for the Sukha to become manifest. Therefore, one Karanam, Atma-Manas Sanyoga, can only bring to manifestation only one thing, depending on what that union is, what that Sanyoga is. Sanyoga required for manifestation of Sukha is of one kind. Sanyoga required for manifestation of Jnana is a different kind. One kind can exist at one time. Therefore, the moment when Sukha is manifest by Atmanas Sanyoga, that time Jnanam is not manifest, cannot be. When Jnanam is, Sukha cannot manifest. How can Jnanam illumine Sukha when they don't exist together? Jnanam to illumine Sukha, they must exist together. Illuminate must be existing together. Firstly, they should exist in different locations. Secondly, they must exist together. That togetherness, simultaneity, yogapatyam also cannot be. Therefore, Jnanam and Sukha cannot enjoy the relationship of illuminate and illumine. So, Mano Yoga Eka Hetutvat. Eka Hetutvat. Eka Hetu. Only one Hetu, Mano Yoga is a Hetu for Sukham as well as Jnanam. Atmanasya Yoga. So, Manasya Yogasya Asamvaya Karanasya Ekameva Atmagadam Prati Hetu Abhyupagamat. So, Manasya Yoga or the association of the mind is the same Hetu for the manifestation of Sukha as well as Jnanam. That is so this is what their Abhyupagama, this is what their conclusion or understanding is. They have arrived at this understanding that for any guna in the Atma to become manifest, Atma should come in contact with mind. And that contact will be of that nature to bring out that guna. That contact will be of different nature to bring out another guna. So different kinds of contacts are required for different gunas to become manifest. At a given time, only one kind of contact can be there, which can bring manifest one kind of guna, and that other guna cannot become manifest. Therefore, Jnanam and Sukha cannot manifest together. So, there is no Jnana to illumine Sukha, therefore Sukha cannot be experienced. Now, we are taking, I experience happiness, simple experience is taken. And whether they can explain that simple experience by their theory, they cannot explain it. That means it doesn't, what they say doesn't make sense, that's the whole idea. So, tathacha Sukha asamvaya karana manasayoganache Sukha senasa. What happens? Imagine that there is now Sanyoga of Atma and Manaha, the kind of Sanyoga that is required for the manifestation of Sukha. Now for other Sanyoga to happen, Sanyoga of Atma and Manaha for manifestation of Jnanam, then this one has to go and the other one has to come. When first Sanyoga goes, Sukha also goes there. Sukha became manifest by a given kind of the association of Atma and Mana. When that goes, then the other one can come. So when jnanam comes, sukha is not there. Sukhasya nasad sayogantara asamvaikarana jnanena sukhasya na grahyatvam. So jnana is what? Sayogantara samvaikarana. Another sanyoga is required for jnana to manifest. One sanyoga is required for sukha to manifest, it is gone. Other sanyoga is required for jnana to manifest, it is not there. And therefore, sukhasya na grahyatvam. So that jnanam is not there when sukha is there. By the time jnanam goes, sukha is gone. Therefore, sukhasya jnanena sukhasya na grahyatvam. Jnanena understand sanyogantara asamvaya karana jnanam. Sanyogantaram is anya sanyoga, another sanyoga. That is the asamvaya means the separate cause, not inherent cause. Like a stick is required for the pot, to turn. So that jnanam which calls for sanyogantara samvaya karanam, that jnanam is not there when the sukha is there, and sukha is not there when jnana is there. Therefore, sukhasya na grahyatvam pratyaksha upadyate iti. Therefore, pratyaksha grahyatvam, that you perceive the happiness immediately, directly, that cannot be explained by this model. So now look at the verse. Yugapat samvetatvam sukha vijnanayoh api na pratigna. Manoyogic hetutvat hetu. Agrahyatvam sukhasya cha. This is the siddham. So then sukhasya cha, there is a chakara there, So therefore this tikagara, they take advantage of this, chakara is there. Now, chakara shabdat, cha shabdat. So api shabdat, sorry. Sukha vijnana api. Api shabdat, atma samvaya api, na prana yukta avatarate iti dyotyate. Therefore, this samvaya sambandha, now what is the sambandha of atma and sukha? Atma and sukha, atma and jnanam, all the qualities that they imagine in atma. What is the relationship between atma and its gunas? So atma is guni, possessed of guna, and these sukha etc. are guna. So what is the relation between guna and guni? This was samvaya sambandha, inseparable sambandha. They imagine sambandha because sambandha means the relationship, association, union that requires two entities. So they look upon guna and guni as separate entities and then imagine a sambandha. They imagine a pot as separate from clay and then imagine a sambandha between them as samvaya sambandha. Vedanta doesn't accept that. Pot is not separate from clay. You can't separate clay from pot. Take away clay, there is no pot. We don't accept guna guni as two entities, they are one entity. Therefore sambandha is not required, it's a nature. The current sambandha between the fire and heat, or fire and light. Because there can be no fire without heat, no fire without light. So you can't separate light. If you can separate them, then there can be sambandha. You cannot. But here they imagine fire to be one entity called ashraya, locus, and heat and light as the gunas of fire, and then imagine a samvaya sambandha, inseparable relationship. This itself you cannot arrive at. Vedanta, you cannot arrive at the sambandha between two one. There are no two entities, so where is sambandha? So api shabdat samvaya api na pramana yukta avatarayati. So Vedantins reject this whole idea of samvaya sambandha. Because you don't accept two entities, pot and clay, guna and guni. So where is the question of sambandha? So the whole idea of samvaya sambandha doesn't make sense. Cha shabdat, then there is sukhasya cha. Cha shabdat atmanaso nirvayavoho padesha bhavat atmanoho eva samyuganupattihi. Now, you see, they say that this mana, what is the dimension of the mind? Atomic. Mind is atomic. Meaning it doesn't have a dimension. That's the reason why we did not look at the atomic aspect of the mind, but the teacher said, the author, you would accept an entity called mind, that's what the Vaisheshikas say, so that you can explain one experience at one perception at a time. Because all the five organs of perception are active right now. The corresponding objects, the sounds are also there, smell also is there, touch also is there. Say I'm sitting somewhere, touching is there, smell is there in the air also is touching, eyes are also functioning. All the five organs of perception are functioning. So theoretically you should have the perception of all the objects together. So what explains that you have perception of one thing at a time and one after the other? That krama is there. So you would accept an entity called mind. And mind is not all pervasive. If it's all pervasive, then you will again experience, of all the entities together. So mind must be in one sense organ at a time. Therefore, you have only one perception at a time. The sequence will be so fast that you think you are experiencing together. But the idea is there, we have only one experience at a time, one vritti at a time. Like the films on the screen, they run so fast it looks like continuous. But there is no continuity. And therefore, the atomic mind explains how there is experience one perception at a time and it is one after the other. Now what is it? Therefore mind must be atomic, not all pervasive. So mind also doesn't have dimension. And so, Shabda, Atma Manaso Niravaya, Atma is Vibhu. Atma is supposed to be all pervasive. And there are countless Atmas, all pervasive. Interesting thing is that all Atmas are all pervasive and still they are distinct. Otherwise, your Atma is all pervasive and then there will be total confusion. But no, Atma that is distinct from the Atma that I am, so they are Vibhu, all pervasive, same time distinct. How? That's how somehow. Now you are talking about this Sanyoga of Atma and the mind. So Atma is all pervasive, that were formless, Nirakara, and partless. Mind is atomic, they were formless and partless. So how these two formless and partless things, how can there be Sanyoga? Isn't it? So Chaka Shabda Atma Niravayavo Atmanasoho. Atma is Vibhu, all pervasive, therefore Nirakara, formless, therefore Niravayava, partless. So that which is part will have a form, is created. So mind also is eternal. So they accept eternal things. The four atoms are eternal, Atma is eternal, Mana is eternal, and Dikkala, the quarters and time are also eternal. So five elements, Atma, Manaha, Dik, Kala. So all of these are Nitya, according to them. Nitya can be not created. Nitya means indestructible, only when they are not created. Anything that is created always has parts. What is not created is partless, otherwise it will be created, and it will be perishable. So, Atmanaso Niravayavoho. Atma and man, both of them are Niravayava. One is atom, therefore without Avayava. One is all pervasive, but Niravayava. Pradesha Abhava. So it's not that Atma is one place and then they are in different Pradesha and come together. Atmanohi. So two Atmas cannot have Sanyoga according to them. Similarly, Atma and Manas also, because Atmas are partless, there were two Atmas cannot have combination. Two partless entities cannot combine with each other. So Atma and mind also are partless, so they also cannot, so how do you expect him? Atmana Sanyoga itself cannot explain because Atma is partless, Manas also is partless. Therefore, Atma eva Sanyoga Anupatti. Just as two Atmas cannot have a Sanyoga with each other, otherwise, because they are distinct. Similarly also, Atma and Mana being partless, also cannot, you can't explain Sanyoga. You can't explain Samvaya, you can't explain this Atmana Sanyoga. Sanyogeva Vibhoho Atmana Vibhaga Anupattehi. If this Sanyoga is possible, if Atma and Mana, both of them are partless, can still have a Sanyoga, suppose then Atma and Atma, they are also partless, so they also have Sanyoga. Sanyogeva, if Atma and Atma also have Sanyoga, then Vibhoho Atmana Vibhaga Anupattihi, then how can you say one Atma and another Atma? If two partless entities can join, like Atma and Mana, then two partless entities like Atma and Atma also can join. If they join, then you can't distinguish one Atma from the other. That you want to distinguish. So you cannot accept the Sanyoga of two Atmas because they are partless. But you accept Sanyoga of Atma and Mana even though they are partless. So either you accept Sanyoga, in which case there is distinction of Atmas cannot be. Or you cannot accept, if you want distinction of Atmas, then you cannot Sanyoga of Atma and Mana. Tadabhave Sanyogantananupatto Jnanadi Karyakrama Anupattehi. Tadabhave Sanyoga Bhave. So Sanyogan, so when Atmana Sanyoga is not there, there is no other Sanyoga. Therefore, Jnanadi Karyakrama, that Jnanam comes and Sukham comes and then the sequence is there, following one after the other. So Karyasya Kramaha Karyakrama. Or so therefore that is the sixth case there, Karyasya Kramaha. Karyakrama means program. Means there is a sequence of karya, sequence of activities, So the sequence is what they accept. And that sequence cannot be if both of them either come always together or never together. So nothing can be explained. So on one, because they need to accept certain siddhanta, partlessness, nityatvam, this, that and what not. And then they so want to explain their day-to-day experiences, doesn't go together. Karyanam, then a lot of things are stated here. Karyanam asamvai karanadesha anativartitva niyama darshanat anyatra. Karyanam asamvai karanadesha anativartitva. The karya cannot be separate from samvai karanam. Now if clay is the samvai karanam for pot, then pot is called karya and clay is called samvai karanam. So karyanam, such as the pots, asamvai karanam, like the clay, desha anativartitvat, a karya such as pot cannot exist in a place other than clay which is samvai karanam. It cannot transcend this space or place, desha, place where the samvai karanam is there. A karyam such as pot cannot exist in a place different from where the clay is. It must be in the same place. So karya, the effect, cannot transcend, cannot get away from the place where the samvai karanam is there, material cause is there. That's a niyama, isn't it? That's called samvai karanam. They must exist in the same place at the same time. Then only they can be inseparable. So samvaya inseparable relationship. That the effect is the cause is unseparated from the effect. Then they must exist. Then that effect cannot exist in a place different from the inseparable cause. Ihapi tat prasange. So here also same prasanga. Here also the karya should be in the same place as samvaya karanam. Pariman Manasyogasya Anudeshamatra Vartitaya. Therefore, Anuparimana Mana. Mana is what? Anuparimana meaning mind is atomic. It is Sanyoga with Atma. Therefore, Anudeshamatra. Therefore, that Sanyoga can be only in Anu. Atma is all pervasive, but mind is only atomic. Therefore, that Samvai Karanam. What is Samvai? The Atma Sanyoga is Samvai Karanam for Sukha, Jnana, etc. to manifest. So Sukha is Karyam. What is Samvai Karanam? Atmana Sanyoga is Samvai Karanam. Invariable required cause for manifestation of Sukha. So therefore, Sukham is Karyam. Must be in the same place as the Sanyoga, Atmana. So Anuparimana Manasyogasya Anudeshamatra Vartitaya. So therefore this Sanyoga of Atma and the mind is atomic, therefore that Sanyoga can be only in only at the atom where the mind is. Its dimension is atomic, dimensionless really. Tat karyasyapi tan matra vartitve. Therefore, wherever the mind is, that is where the Sanyoga is. Mind is atomic, therefore Sanyoga also atomic. Therefore, Atma and Sanyoga in one place at a time. So that's what they want. In the eyes it is there, so that is why you only see, you don't hear. Then you hear, therefore you don't touch. But we have that experience. Sakala Shariragata Atma Vedanayaha. But then when the pain happens in the whole body, in our experience also, that you experience pain in the whole body. Or other example is that when you take a dip, you are so hot in Rishikesh, you take a dip in the Ganga, you experience cold in the whole body simultaneously, isn't it? Meaning that we have the experience of Vedana or sensation of in the whole body, either a Vedana of pain or cold and things like that. So there are experiences where there is the simultaneous experience of the whole body. If the mind is atomic, then that Vedana will be only in one atom, where the mind is not in the whole body. That would be nice, but that's not so. By the same token, that cold exhilaration that experience in cold water also will be on one atomic, not elsewhere. Apratyaksha prasanga, therefore by that atomic mind and the manasyoga, atma manasyoga, so that sanyoga will be in one place where the mind is. Therefore, the sensation which is a result of that sanyoga in one place only. You can't explain sensation in the whole body. Ityadi dushanagana samuchchayate, and like this, so many dushanas are there by chakara. Samuchchayate. So that chakara is there at all these kind of fallacies in the thinking or the defects in thinking, let us say. All of these also are implied here in this. Okay. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamada Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Krutau Vande Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeri Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyoma Vadyapta Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.